It's finally here, the long-anticipated sequel to one of the best Zelda games of all time. Through all the speculating and questioning on what this game might actually be, we can finally all sit down and do what we've been wanting to do for ages, and that's speculate some more. As much as I want to talk about Tears of the Kingdom, I don't own it yet because of... However, just by looking at what little info there is, it's clear that this will be one of the Zelda games of all time. Truly some interesting mechanics that build off of Breath of the Wild's already polished system, but I can't help but wonder, even before playing the game, about where this series will go next. It's rare to get a sequel to a Zelda game directly after the last one. The only other one that I know of that did that was Majora's Mask, coming from Ocarina of Time. But just like that game, Tears of the Kingdom uses the same engine and dives even more into sequel territory by using the same map. And while you might say this will be the only sequel, let's just put some things into perspective. Breath of the Wild was wildly successful. Of course, launching with a highly successful console helped it, but it was certainly a kind of game that everyone was able to play and understand. It truly pushed the boundaries of what an open world game can really be, while still offering linear experiences for those baby shitters who need their hands being held. I was one of those baby shitters who didn't know how to play this game. With a game that successful, it's no brainer to make a sequel because now more than ever are people invested. And from the start of that teaser, people were intrigued. This has to be one of the most hype releases of 2023, and even after the game comes out, it will probably still be talked about until we go into the next year. Heck, people still talk about and discover new things about Breath of the Wild to this day. Would it really make sense just to stop right here? I mean, there's a storyline, a fleshed out world, a villain that needs to be more fleshed out, and whether or not Tears of the Kingdom does that is up in the air because, again, if Breath of the Wild went into building up this world and establishing these characters, Tears of the Kingdom is most likely to flesh that out a bit more, so it begs the question, what's gonna happen beyond that? Let's say there is a third game after this one. We know the world, we know the characters, we have a villain that may or may not return. What exactly do you do? You could always add on top of the second game with going into these characters even more, but if you keep doing that, it becomes like a Popeye's biscuit, stale. It's not like the story is a driving force of the game, but it's something to think about because we see everything through the eyes of Link. In the first game, his dementia aids in exploring the world as a player. There was a connection. Tears of the Kingdom sees the return of Ganondorf as a main villain, but if they were to do another game, what if this guy didn't return? I know having a Zelda game without Ganondorf is like eating a sandwich without mayo, but let's be honest, not everybody wants mayo. Oh my god! It's nothing against the character. It's just that he's always been the villain even when he isn't in Dwarf form. I know within the lore, Demise cursed the hero to always have evil follow them, but these games have clearly broken a lot of Zelda tropes. I'm not saying that the character has to be gone from the franchise. No. That would be really stupid. But I think once Link defeats Ganon in this game, the storyline can continue with other threats. See what challenges and villains Link has to face off before being reincarnated. I mean, come on. You're telling me that Ganon is the only one that wants to take over Hyrule? Heck, what if they're not from Hyrule? I just think that there can be an opportunity to show off different villains with different motivations. Nintendo, let me do it. My motivation could be that it wasn't me when I was hungry and I can make you a lot of money off of a Snickers sponsorship. But like I said before, story isn't the only thing that drives the game here. It's all about the gameplay. And if there's one thing that can always be improved upon, it's, well, that. Before getting into new mechanics, let's talk about what can be improved upon. Before you start saying that the weapon durability needs to be stronger, no. It serves its purpose. You're being on your toes. You need to have different weapons for different scenarios. It adds a better challenge. Increasing durability or removing it entirely would be very broken. Tears of the Kingdom has this fuse ability with your weapons and shields, and if there were to be a way to increase your durability, it would probably be through there because, you know, crafting. But personally, I never understood the argument against the weapon system in Breath of the Wild. It can get annoying, but it's also something that can be worked around if you're not trying to just stick to one weapon. However, I can understand the argument about dungeons. While me personally, I didn't find a problem with it in Breath of the Wild, I know people were not too happy with the Divine Beast and shrines. While they did offer puzzles that were both challenging and rewarding, they didn't feel like normal Zelda dungeons. They were just so visually similar and often borrow gimmicks between one another. It's kind of like how that one annoying cousin keeps copying you on everything that you do, Derek. One of the best parts of the older games was seeing what item you would get in a dungeon and using it to defeat the boss. While it is a very overdone system, it is a fun one that I think could aid well in this type of environment. Granted, the items aren't too overpowered and can be found in the overworld after they break. And speaking of the overworld, that's another thing that I feel has to change a little bit for another sequel. Tears of the Kingdom is using the same world again, but this time with Sky Islands. If there were to be another game, surely they wouldn't do this again. Whatever happens in Tears of the Kingdom will probably tell us what could possibly happen for a third game in this series. I highly doubt that key locations would be all too different, so if you were to do another game, the world would have to change drastically. I'm talking making the grass blue and the sky green, baby! However, I think I have noticed a little something within the title of these two games. Breath of the Wild was the first game, a game about exploring the world and being one with the earth. Tears of the Kingdom takes to the sky, having you explore what's in the air of this world. Since the first game had breath and the second game deals with the element of air, I don't think it's too crazy to think that the next game might have to do with water in some kind of way. It makes sense, I swear!
Okay, I think you need to calm down.
Don't tell me to be calm! Look, I'll admit, I might be grasping at straws here, but a series of Zelda games that go into the 4 elements would be kind of interesting. I mean, we have yet to see everyone's favorite temple, the water one! It's been years since something like that, and with this game taking it to the sky, it might give us more focus on the Rito as a species. I mean, it does make sense. They can fly! And the game takes place in the sky, but hey, that's just a theory. So if my theory is correct, the next game will have more of a focus on water. Maybe there's a little secret that lies below the seas of Hyrule, and Link and the Zora have to explore it only to release a powerful being threatening to flood the world or something. I don't know, that's my best idea. It could also be a coincidence, but I like to read into things too deeply and get my hopes up for it. It's kind of like how I started believing everyone who said their uncle worked at Nintendo, and then somehow started taking on a shit ton of debt because of that. But if this is correct now, that means we're not just in for one other game, we're in for 2. Again, I don't believe that this is the case, but I think it could be cool. A 4-game series based on all the elements where all the titles can correlate to one another. Breath of the Wild represents Earth, Tears of the Kingdom represents air, the next one represents water with the title being something like, I don't know, Flames of the People. And in the fire game representing fire, it can be titled something like Legend of Zelda Earth, just to be quirky. It can lead to things we haven't seen in a Zelda game yet, like what if in the water game Death Mountain erupts to try and stop the flooding. And then in the fire game, you have to traverse a burning land to save not only the people of Hyrule, but Hyrule itself. It can work, goddammit! But again, it is all hypothetical and concepts. This is just a big what if they continue down this road, taking the open world and building upon it for the next game. There's always the idea of doing something completely different. I mean, there's always the chance of doing another spin-off, kind of like with Hyrule Warriors, but in terms of mainline entries, what if there was a return to the classic Zelda shenanigans? The last top-down Zelda game we got was A Link Between Worlds, a sequel to A Link to the Past, and it was pretty well received. It was a return to a style that people haven't seen, and it was done in such a way that was true to the original while also still being new. I totally think you can make another one of these and up the stakes a bit and make it better for home consoles. Link's Awakening showed that this style of gameplay on a home console works well, and people do want more of it. Although I would do away with the cutesy art style. I think it works great for remakes, and I would love to see other series do it like Earthbound. I think another top-down Zelda game would benefit in having its own identity, but the chances of that are very slim. I think there would be more of a chance that they go back to the older style of Zelda gameplay. More akin to Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess. I didn't like one of these games and I never played the other 2. People hold these titles in high regard and praise them still to this day. I doubt that they would go as linear as Skyward Sword since people don't look at that game as fondly, and also people are now more used to having freedom within their game. I think if they were to do another mainline game, getting closer to these games could be the move. Zelda has its staples, and Breath of the Wild kind of did away with a lot of them. I don't think reverting entirely would be smart, but I do think a healthy mix of both classic and modern Zelda would be a way to freshen things up a bit. And it would probably f up the timeline even more and make people go even more crazy than they already are. I'd pay good money to see that. But I can't stress enough that all of this is just speculation. It's been 6 years since Breath of the Wild, and we're only now getting the sequel. I think it's safe to say that we won't be seeing another game in the series for a while. I mean, no matter what I say here, they are already working on the next game. It's just kind of hard to see where things will go after Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, the game did just come out yesterday. Whether or not it's actually good is still up in the air for me, but I seriously doubt that they are stopping here. Zelda is a crazy huge series, and the fact that we're getting 2 mainline titles on one console is kind of insane. I bet we won't even see another game until the next Nintendo console comes out, and if that's the case, well, we'll see the next generation of Zelda by then. But until then, we'll all just sit down and enjoy what we have now. And for one, I can't wait to play the sequel to one of my favorite games of all time, just as everyone else is playing it at the exact same time, and I forgot that I don't own the game yet.